next we'll see about the sampling of the wastewater. So what is the sampling? We will do it. Why we have to do the sampling? Why, for what purpose we have to take the sample of the wastewater? So there is a reason. So the main objective of sampling is to collect a representative sample should be there. A representative sample, for taking the objective of the sampling is to there is a representative sample will be there. This by this representative sample by means a sample in which whatever the relative positions are there or relative concentration or the relative concentration for all the but whatever the components will be, that will be same as that of the material being sampled. So moreover, whatever the same samples which has been handled in a such a way that there is a no significant change in the composition which occur before the test which is been made. So these whatever the same samples are there, the volume shall be the optimal small enough that it can be transported and large enough for the analytical purpose. Because of this increased placed on a vertical verifying the accuracy to for anything either analysis purpose, these for the representatives of the data, the greater emphasis will be placed on the proper sampling collections. So whatever the tracking for the preservation techniques, so it will be placed. So often whatever the laboratories are there, the personal help in the planning of the sampling program in the consultation with the whatever the users and the test result, such consultation is very essential to ensure the selective samples and analytical method that should be proper and provide a sound and a very valid basis for any prompted samples. So that is that will meet with all whatever the regulatories and whatever the regulations which has been made. So the main objectives and the significant must be very clear to understand when the environmental sampling is will be carried out. So in the field records and whatever the analysis data which is being obtained using analytical instruments, that is what required. If you correctly evaluate the environmental situation, such data must be a representation of the environmental. So in order to obtain this accurate environmental data, it is very required that analysis whatever the analysis samples are there, that should be representative. So however they are not particularly very easy to collect, so can only to accumulate a proper appropriate planning and implementation of this sampling. So in terms of the types of the whatever the aquatic samples, we include river water, sea water, factory effluent or factory discharge sampling, that will be regarded for the air sampling. We look with the gases from the factories and vehicles as well as the ambient air sampling. So more sometimes the river beds samples also will be taken for the sampling. So the most important issues when uh, drawing up to the plan whatever for the sampling, it is very clearly understand and very clearly understood its significance and its objective. So in other words, we must very correctly determine how, why, and what should to conduct the survey, what is the data which is to be analyzed, what is the data should be required to collect, whether further sampling work should be undertaken according to specified required procedure. So in such cases, whether it is important to use the sampler and the sample whatever the contents, whether it is to take carried away such a procedure, regularly surveys are required to provide successive sampling analysis of data is in order to whether to identify the environmental changes or any requirement for the such sampling must be very consistent in its own methodology and the locations. So at very high degree of accuracy is sometimes when it is required, which undertaking the sampling to determine whether the whether it has met the requirement or not, that will be checked. When this whatever the samplings are there, to undertake some of the accidental conditions, the whatever the datas are there, these datas should be obtained accurately to establish some of the causes and the evaluate the site in order to discuss the and they take appropriate uh, measurements. Or sometimes a counter measurements is also be required to take. So this is how the sampling will be done. So in this sampling techniques, so there are the two types of the samples. One is graph samples, another is a composite sample. So these are the two types of the samples which will be carried away. Sometimes, very rarely, integrated samples also be carried away. So this is how these are the types of the sample which is being carried away. So as I told, in the case of the graph sample or is just it's a single type of the collected sample. I will tell you briefly, very simply. In detail, I will explain in detail in the next classes. The graph samples are a very simple collected samples of a specified spot or a site over the short period of the time. So that is the graph sample. Next, composite sample is the composite sample should provide a very representative samples of the heterogeneous in which the concentration of the analytical whatever they are there, that is interest may vary over the period of the time or the space. That's about the composite sample. Next, for the integrated sample, for whatever the certain purpose, the information, so whatever the informations are there that needed to provide the best analyze the mixture of the graph sample collected from the different points simultaneously. So using the discharge weighted method of the equal width increment or equal discharge increment procedure or equipment, this can be done. So apart from this, the whatever to evaluate the average composition of the total loading, the use of the mixture whatever in this sample that represent the various point across the cross section or the various places that is to be needed. The whatever the needed integrated sample may exist in the combined treatment that is proposed for the several separate wastewater streams. uh, Wastewater streams that is interacted, that interactions for which may be significant effect or treatment for the even for the composition. So mathematical prediction of the interactions chemical components may inaccurate or impossible, and the testing suitable increment sampling may be provided for the useful information.